This happened to me in 1988. I was 34 and worked for a company in Cedar Rapids that sold industrial parts. That week, I had traveled 3 hours to eastern Ohio to meet with a factory that regularly bought bolts and other supplies from us. I had been away from home since Tuesday. This was Thursday night, or really Friday morning, sometime around 2. I had been traveling for work for 6 years, and I followed the same routine every night. Lock the door, fasten the chain, check the window, put my room key on the nightstand beside the lamp. I never skipped it. I reached over and switched on the light. My paperwork was still spread across the second bed exactly where I had left it. Purchase orders, a map of the factory loading area, my reading glasses, and a yellow legal pad. My suitcase was open on the luggage rack near the closet. Everything looked normal. Then I looked at the door. The chain was hanging loose against the frame. I stared at it. I knew I had fastened it before going to sleep. I remembered pulling on the door afterward to make sure it held. The chain was not broken. It was simply open. I got out of bed. I checked the bathroom. Empty. Then the closet. Empty. The window was still locked. For a few seconds, I stood there trying to understand what I was looking at. Then I noticed something on the carpet near the door, my room key. I stopped. Before going to sleep, I had placed that key on the nightstand beside the lamp. I remembered doing it because it was part of my routine. I always wanted to know exactly where the key was if I needed to leave quickly. Now it was lying on the floor less than 2 feet from the door. I looked back at the nightstand. Empty. Then, at the chain. Open. I picked up the key. There was no way it had fallen from the nightstand and somehow crossed the room by itself. That was when I stopped trying to convince myself I had forgotten something. Someone had been inside my room. I fastened the chain again and sat on the edge of the bed until daylight. I did not sleep. The next morning, I called the front desk. Donna, the woman who had checked me in, answered. I asked, "Did anyone from the hotel enter my room last night?" Donna paused before replying. "Not that I know of, ma'am." Was there a problem? I looked toward the door. I told her my room key was moved. Donna asked, "Moved where?" I left it beside my bed. This morning it was on the floor by the door, and the chain was open. Donna was quiet for a second. Then she said, "No one from housekeeping should have been in there overnight." I asked, "What about maintenance?" Donna replied, "I can check, but I don't think so." I thanked her and hung up. That morning I went to the factory for my meetings. The purchasing manager was a man named Ellis. He was friendly and kept a coffee pot running in his office all day. I tried to focus on work. By the afternoon, I was almost succeeding. Then Ellis mentioned a phone call. We were looking at a delivery schedule when he said, "Someone called for you this morning." I looked up. Here, Ellis nodded. "A man. Said he was with your company." I asked, "What did he want?" Ellis said, "He asked if you were still staying at the hotel off Route 9. I stopped looking at the paperwork. Did your secretary tell him where I was staying?" Ellis shook his head. "No, she didn't know." I stared at him. Ellis continued, "He already knew the hotel. He was asking if you were still there." I asked, "Did he leave a name?" Ellis said, "No. Just said he was checking your schedule. Nobody from my company would have called a customer to ask where I was staying. That was not how we worked. But there was a bigger problem. Nobody at my company knew I was staying at the Route 9 hotel. My original reservation had been downtown. When I arrived Tuesday evening, that hotel told me they had overbooked. The clerk called another hotel and found me a room off Route 9. I drove there directly. I had not called my office. I had not told Ellis. I had not even told my husband Tom until after I reached the new hotel. As far as I knew, almost nobody knew where I had ended up. But that caller did. I was not spending another night there without telling someone. When I returned to the hotel that afternoon, I called Tom from the payphone in the lobby. I did not want to use the phone upstairs. Tom answered. I lowered my voice. Something happened in my room last night. Tom immediately asked, what happened? I told him about waking around 2, then the open chain, then my room key on the floor beside the door. Finally, I told him about the man who had called the factory. Tom stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, you need to have somebody check that room. I replied, I don't even know what to tell them. Tom said, tell them exactly what you told me. So I contacted the local authorities. 2 officers came to the hotel. The younger one mostly took notes. The older officer introduced himself as Sergeant Halloran. He had a calm way of speaking that immediately made me feel less foolish. Halloran followed me upstairs. I pointed at the door. That's the chain. Halloran fastened it, then he pulled on the door. It held. He pulled harder, still held. Halloran opened the chain and examined it closely. Then he looked at me. You're positive you fastened this before going to sleep? I answered, yes. I even pulled on the door afterward. Halloran asked, and your room key? I left it on that nightstand. I pointed beside the bed. Where did you find it? On the floor beside the door. Halloran looked from the nightstand to the doorway. That was several yards. He asked, did you get up during the night? No. Order anything? No. Open the door for anyone? No. Halloran looked at the chain again. Then he said, I don't know how that opened. He glanced toward the floor by the door, and I don't know how your key got over there. Then his expression changed slightly. Halloran added, but the phone call at the factory makes this a lot harder to dismiss. He asked Donna for the hotel guest records and maintenance log. There had been no maintenance work scheduled for my room, no housekeeping service overnight. Then Donna brought out the guest cards. Halloran went through them slowly. After a minute, he stopped. He held up one card. Halloran said, a man named Daniel Cobb checked into the room directly across from yours. I looked toward the hallway. When? Halloran checked the card. Tuesday night. I waited. Then Halloran looked at me. Less than an hour after you checked in. Daniel Cobb had walked into the hotel without a reservation and paid cash. His card said he planned to stay through Thursday night, but sometime early Friday morning, he had left. He never went to the front desk to check out. He simply left his key in the room and disappeared. Halloran checked the address Cobb had written on his registration card. The town existed, the street existed, the house number did not. Donna asked housekeeping whether anyone remembered him. One woman did. She described Cobb as quiet and polite. He mostly kept to himself. Then she remembered something strange. The housekeeper told Halloran. He asked me where the ice machine was. Halloran asked, wasn't there one on that floor? The woman nodded. Right down the hall. I looked at Halloran. Why would he ask where it was? Halloran answered, I don't know. He walked across the hallway and stepped into Cobb's room. I stayed at the doorway. From inside that room, my door was directly across the hall. There was nowhere for me to enter or leave without someone in Cobb's room being able to see it. Halloran walked to the window next. From there, he could see most of the parking lot, including the area near the lobby where I parked every evening. My company always told women traveling alone to park close to the entrance. My car was a blue sedan with Iowa plates. Most of the cars there had Ohio plates. Mine stood out. Halloran looked through the window for several seconds. Then he asked Donna, how do you handle spare room keys? Donna explained that the hotel kept emergency copies behind the front desk for lockouts and staff use. Halloran asked, can you say for sure who might have been near those keys last night? Donna hesitated. Then she said, no. Halloran did not accuse Cobb of taking one. There was no proof, and even if someone had gotten a spare key, that still did not explain the chain. That was the part none of us could explain. Halloran asked Donna to move me. I was given a room 3 floors higher. That night I checked the lock twice, then the chain, then the window. I put my room key inside my purse instead of leaving it on the nightstand, and before going to bed, I pushed a chair near the door. I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway woke me. The next morning, Halloran spoke with me one more time. He told me, we can't connect Cobb directly to your room. I asked, do you think he was inside? Halloran paused, Then he answered, "I don't know." I looked at him. My key was beside the door. "I know." The chain was open. "I know." And he disappeared that same morning. Halloran nodded. Then he said, "Those things bother me too, but I can't tell you who entered that room without something connecting a person to it." That answer stayed with me. Not because I thought Halloran was wrong, because I knew someone had been inside. I just did not know who. I finished my work at the factory the following day. Ellis shook my hand before I left. He said, "Drive safe." I told him, "I will." I left Ohio a day earlier than planned. I stopped once for gas and stayed beside my car the entire time. When I finally reached home, Tom came outside before I had even switched off the engine. He opened my car door. Tom asked, "You okay?" I nodded. Then he hugged me. We stood in the driveway for a long time. It took almost 2 weeks before I felt comfortable driving alone again. My company offered to give that sales territory to another representative. Normally, I would have argued. That time I didn't. I let someone else take it. About a week later, Sergeant Halloran called my house. Tom answered first and handed me the phone. Tom said, "It's Halloran." I took the receiver. Halloran said, "I went back through the hotel records." My stomach tightened. I asked, "Did you find Cobb?" Halloran replied, "No, we still don't know who Daniel Cobb really was." I sat down at the kitchen table. Halloran continued, "But I found something I think you should know." I asked, "What?" Halloran said, "I checked the exact times." I waited. "You checked into the Route 9 hotel at 7:18 Tuesday evening." "Okay," Halloran continued. "Daniel Cobb checked in at 8:04. I stopped moving." He added, 46 minutes after you." Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Halloran said, "There's something else." I tightened my grip on the phone. "What?" "Donna remembers Cobb asking for a room on your floor." I sat completely still. "Did he ask for the room across from mine?" Halloran replied, "No, not that specific room. He only asked for that floor. Donna thought he wanted somewhere quieter. Room 214 happened to be available. My room was 215, directly across the hall." Halloran spoke carefully. "None of this proves he followed you. It doesn't prove he knew who you were." I said, "Nobody knew I was staying at that hotel. Not my office, not Ellis. I hadn't even planned on staying there myself. And somehow Cobb still found me." There was a long silence. Halloran never found Daniel Cobb. I never learned who called the factory that morning, or how my room key ended up beside the door, but I know what happened that night. Someone entered my room while I was sleeping, and by the time I woke up, the man across the hall was gone.